tell me about yourself. Lesson 1.3. In this lesson, this is a typical sentence that you pronounce when you interview someone for a job. Tell me something about yourself. Who are you? Etc. So the vocabulary is related to job interviews, interview advice. And we are going to learn to use two-word responses instead of one-word responses. You'll see what that means later on. As usual, the speaking activity is something that we'll do at home, in class, but you need to look at it at home and see what you think about what you can say in a group activity. Okay? Next, we've got the vocabulary activity for interview advice. It says below, look at the topics 1 to 3, and below, these are the topics, and match them to the expressions in the box. So things that you should do during an interview, shouldn't do, or might do. Remember that there is a possibility. It's not compulsory, not obligatory. And the example is dress smartly. That means dress in an elegant way, in a formal way. So this is something you might do before an interview, obviously not during the interview, okay? Because you're not dressing during the interview, you do it before. Okay, so for the rest, decide which one is the right, let's say, choice. Next, and these are things, the B part is something that we can do in class. This is the text that you had to read first before doing that activity. And then we'll move into the function, talking about yourselves. It says read the text and answer these questions. So you read this text, the blue text first, this one, and then try to answer these. You'll have a fill in the gaps activity to try to answer these two questions. And then you've got a listening activity here. It says listen to 3 extracts from the audio and answer the questions. Again, you'll see you've got a fill in the gap activity in the work, in the textbook, in the platform, sorry. The second part is answer these questions. And again, there's an activity in the platform to try to answer those questions. Next, on the next page, it says read the extracts from the audio 1 to 7 and underline the expressions that introduce a question. You just need to pay attention here to how you introduce a question. So here the example is, could I ask you a question or could I ask a question? That's like saying, I'm asking you for permission to ask you a question. Sometimes you may even say, can I ask you a personal question? Because maybe people don't want to answer that type of question. If you think about it, look at this one. Can I ask you about that? So that's another way of saying and introducing these other questions. I need more detail. What type of things did you do? And then what about this one? I do have a query. It's like I have something that I want to know about, and then you've got permission from the other person to continue asking. The next activity says read the extracts below. So these are the extracts, extract 1, 2, and 3. So those are pieces of interviews. And underline the expressions that are used to introduce an opinion. So look at this one. So for me, what about this one? I suppose it's like, it's in a way, it's a way to soften your opinion, because it's I think, or I'd have to say the same thing. It depends. This is like, well, yeah, this is subject to discussion. And then you say, in my opinion, it's like something that maybe you have a different opinion on. And yes, I'll accept it, and we can still be friends. If I'm accepted, how about this one? This is very formal. I saw that. Okay, so this is something that, it's what I saw. Okay, so this is introducing if I am accepted. If I'm I saw that there are one thing I'd like to say. Well, that's another way of saying something, introducing that opinion. So now if we go to page 128 to the language bank and go to the third part, you'll see here on page 128 the ways of introducing a question, like could I ask a question? There are a couple of things I'd like to ask about. Could I ask you about that? I have a query. And again, the expressions for introducing the opinion. And on the page following that one, what you've got to do is try to find and correct the mistakes in the conversation. And there are 6 mistakes. Okay? So, if we move on to the next activity, activity number 6 consists of putting those prompt words in order, in the right order, to make a sentence. To try to remember the expressions we've just seen. Like, I do have a query. Maybe you wonder, why do you use an auxiliary form here? I do have a query. It's a way of emphasizing that, okay? It's emphasis. It's only emphasis when you use the auxiliary do in a positive sentence, okay? You don't need to worry more about that. So, okay, so now we move to activity 7A and B. It says use 2-word responses, okay? These are very short answers. Like, of course, that's right, I see, no problem, go ahead. Now, let me tell you, these are expressions that are very, very useful for an ongoing conversation to become very dynamic when you're, especially in an interview, okay? So, what you need to do is just match the expressions with synonymous expressions or their meaning, okay? And then, finally, there is a speaking activity here that we'll mostly do in class by looking at pages, different pages. So one of the things that you could do is have a look at these at home on your own before we come to class to be ready to talk about all of this.